The most powerful man in New York was smiling as hundreds of wealthy guests rose to their feet and applauded him beneath crystal chandeliers. Damian Moretti owned half the city. Politicians shook his hand. CEOs waited for his approval. Nobody challenged him. Nobody even looked him in the eye for too long. Then a sharp crack exploded across the ballroom. My hand stung instantly. The music stopped. The applause died. Every head turned toward me. I had just slapped Damian Moretti across the face. The most feared mafia boss in the city slowly turned his head back toward me. His steel blue eyes locked onto mine. The entire room froze. Security reached for their earpieces. Men in black suits took a step forward. Everyone expected me to be dragged out. Everyone expected him to destroy me. But Damian didn't move. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten me. He simply stared. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst through my chest. "Someone who isn't afraid of you," I answered. Gasps echoed around the room. Then I turned around and walked away. No one stopped me. Not him. Not his men. Not anyone. 3 days later, Damian canceled meetings worth millions of dollars. He ignored rival families. He ignored business deals. He had only one question. Who was the woman who dared to slap him? Then he finally found me. Not in a mansion. Not in a luxury penthouse. I was standing in a crowded elementary school hallway helping a little girl tie her shoes. Damian watched from across the street in silence. And for the first time in his life, the most powerful man in New York realized the woman who humiliated him might be the only person who could change him forever. The first time I touched Damian Moretti's face, the entire city forgot how to breathe. The applause was deafening. Hundreds of people stood beneath glittering crystal chandeliers, raising glasses of champagne toward the man everyone had come to celebrate. Damian Moretti. 35 years old. Billionaire. Philanthropist. Business magnate. The newspapers loved him. The politicians admired him. The wealthy followed him. And the people who truly knew him feared him. I stood near the back of the ballroom balancing a silver tray in my hands, trying to stay invisible. That should have been easy. I wasn't a guest. I wasn't important. I was Olivia Parker, a 27-year-old elementary school teacher working a catering shift during spring break to help pay off student loans. My black uniform felt too tight. My feet hurt. And all I wanted was to survive the evening without dropping a tray. Outside, rain tapped softly against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Grand Monarch Hotel. Inside, everything sparkled. Gold accents. Marble floors. Designer gowns. Tailored tuxedos. It felt like stepping into a world that belonged to someone else. A world where people spent more on watches than I earned in a year. The master of ceremonies stepped onto the stage. Tonight, we honor a man whose contributions have transformed this city. More applause followed. Damian rose from his chair near the front of the room. The crowd practically glowed with admiration. He looked exactly like the magazines described him. Dark hair. Sharp jawline. Expensive black suit fitted so perfectly it looked custom-made. Calm gray-blue eyes that seemed to miss absolutely nothing. Everything about him radiated control. Confidence. Authority. The kind of power that made entire rooms adjust themselves around a single person. I watched him accept the award. He smiled politely. Shook hands. Thanked sponsors. Said all the right things. Then something happened. A young hotel employee accidentally bumped into one of the tables while carrying a tray of drinks. Glasses rattled. One tipped over. Red wine spilled across an expensive white tablecloth. The room fell silent. The young employee froze. He couldn't have been older than 19. His face immediately turned pale. "I'm so sorry, sir," he said. It was an accident. The event manager rushed over. His expression darkened. You're done, he snapped. Pack your things and leave. The kid looked devastated. Please, sir. I need this job. Several guests looked away. Others pretended not to notice. Nobody wanted to get involved. Nobody except me. Because I had seen that same look before. The look of someone being humiliated while everyone stood by in silence. Then Damien spoke. His voice was calm. Controlled. But every person in the room listened instantly. If someone can't handle simple responsibility, he said, they shouldn't be here. The employee's shoulders dropped. The room laughed nervously. The manager nodded eagerly. And something inside me broke. Before I could stop myself, I set down my tray. My pulse thundered in my ears. Every step toward Damien felt impossible. Yet somehow I kept walking. One step. Then another. The crowd parted. Confused whispers followed me. Damien noticed me approaching. His eyes narrowed slightly. Curious. Uncertain. Nobody approached him without permission. Nobody challenged him publicly. I stopped directly in front of him. The ballroom became impossibly quiet. I could hear my own breathing. I could hear the rain against the windows. Damien looked down at me. Calm. Untouchable. Powerful. Then I looked him directly in the eye and said the words nobody else in that room would ever dare say. Being powerful doesn't give you the right to forget how to be human. I expected security to grab my arm the second the words left my mouth. I expected angry voices, threats, maybe even to be escorted out through the nearest exit. Instead, nothing happened. The silence stretched across the ballroom like a wire pulled too tight. Damien Moretti stood perfectly still. The smile he had worn for the cameras disappeared. Around us, hundreds of guests watched without speaking. Nobody touched their champagne. Nobody checked their phones. Every eye remained fixed on the two of us. For a moment, I wondered if I had made a terrible mistake. Then Damien did something even more surprising. He looked past me. Not at me. Past me. His gaze settled on the young employee standing near the ruined tablecloth. The kid looked like he wanted the marble floor to open and swallow him whole. Damien studied him for several seconds before turning back toward the event manager. What is your name? He asked the employee. The young man blinked. Ethan, sir. Damien nodded once. How long have you worked here, Ethan? Almost 11 months, sir. His voice shook. Damien glanced at the spilled wine. Then at the manager. 11 months without incident? The manager hesitated. Yes, but tonight. Damien raised a finger. The manager stopped talking immediately. The room somehow became even quieter. One accident does not erase 11 months of good work, Damien said calmly. Clean the table. Continue the event. Ethan stared at him in disbelief. So did everyone else. The manager quickly nodded. Of course, sir. I did not understand what had just happened. Neither did the guests. A few exchanged confused looks. Others suddenly found their champagne glasses fascinating. Damien slowly returned his attention to me. Those gray-blue eyes were impossible to read now. And you, he said quietly. My stomach tightened. What about me? His expression remained neutral. Most people spend their lives trying to impress me. I folded my arms. That sounds exhausting. To my surprise, a few nearby guests almost smiled before catching themselves. Damien noticed too. Something flickered in his eyes. Not anger. Something else. Curiosity. Who are you? He asked. The question sounded genuine. Not demanding. Not threatening. Genuine. I swallowed. Nobody important. I doubt that. His answer came immediately. Before I could think of a response, someone called his name from across the ballroom. Reporters were gathering near the stage. More photographs. More speeches. More attention. Damien looked toward them, then back at me. It felt as though he was memorizing my face. "Enjoy the rest of your evening, miss." He waited. I refused to help him. "Good night, Mr. Moretti." Then I turned and walked away. My hands were trembling so badly I nearly dropped a tray 5 minutes later. I finished my shift just after midnight. Rain still fell outside. The city lights reflected across wet pavement as I stepped onto the sidewalk. The cold air felt wonderful after hours inside the crowded ballroom. I thought it was over. I thought I would never see Damien Moretti again. I was wrong. Because across town, while the city slept, the most powerful man in New York was staring at a photograph from the gala and asking a question nobody in the room could answer. Find her. The next morning began exactly the way every ordinary Tuesday in my life began. My alarm went off at 6 o'clock. I spilled coffee on my kitchen counter. I rushed through Manhattan traffic. And by 7:30, I was standing in front of 22 third graders explaining fractions with colored markers and construction paper. Nobody in room 214 knew I had challenged one of the most powerful men in New York less than 12 hours earlier. Honestly, I was trying to forget it myself. Children have a way of pulling you back into reality. They do not care about billionaires. They care about missing pencils, gold stars, and whether the class hamster is happy. By lunchtime, the gala already felt unreal. Like something that had happened to somebody else. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I ignored it. A minute later it buzzed again. Then again. 3 times in less than 5 minutes. I finally answered during my lunch break. "Hello?" Silence. Then a woman's voice. Professional. Calm. "Miss Parker, someone would like to arrange a meeting." I frowned. "Who?" Another brief pause. "Mr. Moretti." My stomach dropped. I stared out the classroom window at the school playground below. Children ran across the blacktop chasing a bright red kickball. The normal scene made the conversation feel even stranger. "No." The answer came out immediately. "Excuse me?" I said no. The woman sounded genuinely surprised. Apparently people did not tell Damien Moretti no very often. "Miss Parker, I do not believe you understand." "I understand perfectly." I ended the call. For several seconds I simply sat there staring at my phone. Then I laughed. A nervous laugh. The kind that escapes when something feels ridiculous. Surely that would be the end of it. Except it was not. Across the city, Damien Moretti was sitting in a glass-walled office overlooking the Hudson River. A file rested on the desk in front of him. My file. Olivia Parker. 27 years old. Elementary school teacher. Lives alone. No criminal record. No wealthy relatives. No political connections. No hidden influence. Nothing remarkable. At least that was what the report claimed. Damien read every page twice. Then a third time. Something bothered him. "This is everything?" he asked. His assistant nodded. "Everything we found." Damien tapped the folder with one finger. "People do not risk their future to defend strangers anymore." His assistant remained silent. Damien looked out toward the river. "There is something missing." Meanwhile, I finished school and headed toward a small grocery store near my apartment. Rain clouds gathered overhead. The air smelled like another storm was coming. I grabbed a basket and started shopping. Bread. Milk. Apples. Normal things. Ordinary things. Then I turned into the produce aisle and froze. Standing 20 feet away in a charcoal gray coat was Damien Moretti. Not surrounded by reporters. Not standing on a stage. Just watching me with those unreadable gray-blue eyes. And somehow that was far more unsettling. For a second, neither of us moved. The grocery store noise seemed to fade into the background. Shopping carts rolled past. Cash registers beeped. Somebody laughed near the bakery section. Yet all I could focus on was the man standing 20 feet away holding a basket with a loaf of bread and a carton of milk as if he were the most ordinary person in New York. Which he definitely was not. Damien looked just as composed as he had at the gala. Calm. Controlled. Impossibly confident. The difference was that now there were no reporters. No cameras. No audience. Just him and me beneath fluorescent lights beside a display of apples. I should have walked away. Instead, I marched straight toward him. "Are you following me?" I asked. Several shoppers glanced at us before continuing on their way. Damien looked down at the basket in his hand. "If I were following you, I would probably be better at hiding it." I hated that answer because it almost made me smile. Almost. "Why are you here?" He considered the question. "I wanted to meet the woman who refused to apologize." "Maybe because I am not sorry." Something shifted in his expression. Not anger. Interest. As though I had confirmed a theory he had been testing. "Most people become nervous around me." I folded my arms. "Maybe that is the problem." His eyebrow lifted slightly. "What does that mean?" The rain began tapping against the windows near the entrance. Outside, gray clouds covered the city skyline. Inside, Damien waited patiently for my answer. "People fear you," I said. "That is not the same thing as respecting you." The words landed between us. Heavy. Direct. Honest. For the first time since I had met him, Damien did not answer immediately. He simply studied me. His eyes narrowed slightly as though he were examining a puzzle that refused to solve itself. Finally he spoke. "You think you understand me?" I laughed softly. "No. I think nobody tells you the truth." The silence that followed felt different. Not tense. Not hostile. Just unexpectedly real. Then an elderly woman nearby struggled to reach a box from the top shelf. Without thinking, I stepped away from Damien and helped her. She thanked me warmly before continuing down the aisle. When I turned back, Damien was still watching. But now there was something unfamiliar in his gaze. Something thoughtful. "You do that naturally," he said. "Do what?" "Help people." I shrugged. "Most people would." "No," he said quietly. "Most people would not." His answer unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. Because he sounded sincere. Not cynical. Not arrogant. Just tired. Like a man who had spent years expecting disappointment from everyone around him. Then his phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen. For the first time I saw irritation cross his face. Whatever message he received clearly mattered. Damien slipped the phone back into his pocket. "I should go." Relief washed through me far faster than I expected. "Good." One corner of his mouth lifted. The closest thing to a smile I had seen from him. "I do not think this conversation is over, Olivia." Hearing my first name in his voice sent a strange chill through me. Before I could respond, he turned and walked toward the exit. Rain greeted him the moment the automatic doors opened. I watched him disappear into the gray afternoon. Then I looked down and noticed something resting beside my shopping basket. A small folded note. My heart skipped. Slowly, I picked it up and opened it. Inside was a single handwritten sentence. "You were wrong about one thing. I do want someone to tell me the truth." I carried that note home in my coat pocket like it weighed 50 pounds. It should have been meaningless. One sentence scribbled on a folded piece of paper. Yet somehow it followed me through the rest of the evening. while I graded math worksheets, while I washed dishes, even while I lay awake staring at the ceiling long after midnight. You were wrong about one thing. I do want someone to tell me the truth. The next morning, New York woke beneath clear skies for the first time all week. Sunlight spilled between the buildings as I walked toward school carrying a tote bag full of lesson plans and art supplies. Normally I loved mornings. The city felt honest before the rush began. Delivery trucks unloading. Coffee shops opening. People hurrying toward ordinary jobs. But that morning my thoughts kept drifting back to Damien. Which annoyed me. Because I had spent exactly 2 conversations with the man and somehow he was taking up far too much space in my head. By lunchtime I had nearly convinced myself to forget about him. Then I discovered something strange. Our school library had received a donation. Not unusual. Donations happened all the time. But this one was different. 20 brand new computers sat neatly arranged across the media room. New books lined shelves that had been half empty for years. Teachers stood around whispering in disbelief. "Do you know who donated all this?" one of them asked. The principal shook her head. Anonymous. Anonymous. The word immediately bothered me. Maybe because I already suspected the answer. Later that afternoon, I found Principal Henderson smiling as she reviewed paperwork in her office. "Whoever donated this changed everything," she said. "We have been trying to get funding for years." I looked through the glass wall toward the library. Students crowded around the new computers with excitement written across their faces. "Did they leave any message?" I asked casually. "Just one sentence." She handed me a small card. My pulse quickened the second I recognized the handwriting. "Every child deserves a fair chance." No signature. No company logo. Nothing else. But I knew. Of course I knew. Damien Moretti had listened. Not to the criticism. Not to the embarrassment. To the reason behind it. For the rest of the day, I could not decide whether I was angry or impressed. Maybe both. Because part of me appreciated what he had done. Another part hated that he had done it without saying a word. As if he understood me better than he should. When school ended, I stayed late helping students prepare decorations for a community fundraiser. By 6 o'clock, only one child remained. 8-year-old Sophie carefully taped paper stars onto a poster board. "Miss Parker?" she asked suddenly. "Yes? Do you think people can change?" The question caught me off guard. I smiled softly. "I think everybody can change if they really want to." Sophie nodded as though that answer mattered deeply. Then she returned to her project. Outside the classroom window, a black SUV rolled slowly past the school before disappearing around the corner. And for the first time, I found myself wondering whether Damien Moretti was trying to prove something to me or trying to prove something to himself. The following week should have felt normal. Instead, it felt like standing on a dock while watching a storm gather somewhere beyond the horizon. You could not see the danger yet, but you could feel it. Little things started happening. Strange things. A black sedan parked across the street from the school 3 days in a row. Unknown phone calls that disconnected the moment I answered. Questions from people who seemed unusually interested in my schedule. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. New York was full of coincidences. Millions of people crossing paths every day. Not everything revolved around Damien Moretti. Then Friday arrived. The community fundraiser filled the school gymnasium with parents, teachers, and local businesses. Children laughed while running between booths. Music played from portable speakers. The smell of popcorn and pizza drifted through the air. It should have been a perfect evening. I was helping Sophie sell raffle tickets when I noticed a man standing near the entrance. I had never seen him before. Nothing about him looked threatening. Gray jacket. Baseball cap. Coffee cup in his hand. Yet something felt wrong. He was not watching the fundraiser. He was watching me. Every time I looked up, his eyes were there. Quiet. Observing. Measuring. A chill ran through me. 30 minutes later, he was still there. So was another unfamiliar face near the parking lot. Then a third across the street. My stomach tightened. This was not coincidence. Sophie tugged on my sleeve. Miss Parker? I forced a smile. What is it? She pointed toward the entrance. A delivery driver had arrived carrying several large boxes. More donations. The principal looked equally surprised. Nobody had ordered anything. Curious, I walked over as volunteers opened the boxes. Inside were brand new art supplies. Paints. Brushes. Sketchbooks. Enough materials for every student in the building. A small envelope rested on top. My heart immediately knew who had sent it. I opened the note. 3 words. For the children. No signature. I almost laughed despite my nerves. Only Damien could somehow be irritating and thoughtful at the same time. Then my phone vibrated. Unknown number. Normally I would have ignored it. This time I answered. Hello? A familiar voice responded immediately. Calm. Deep. Controlled. Leave the fundraiser now. Every muscle in my body went rigid. Damien? Olivia, listen carefully. His tone had changed. Gone was the curiosity. Gone was the amusement. This voice carried urgency. You need to leave. I glanced around the crowded gymnasium. Parents chatting. Children laughing. Teachers cleaning tables. Everything looked perfectly safe. Why? Several seconds passed. Then Damien answered quietly. Because someone else has started asking questions about you. And unlike me, they are not interested in getting answers. My grip tightened around the phone. The noise of the fundraiser suddenly felt distant. Children's laughter echoed from somewhere across the gym. Parents chatted near the refreshment tables. Yet all I could hear was Damien's voice. What are you talking about? I asked quietly. I cannot explain over the phone. His answer came immediately. Just leave. Right now. I looked around again. The unfamiliar faces I had noticed earlier were still there. The man near the entrance. Another near the parking lot. A third standing beside a dark sedan across the street. None of them looked dangerous. That somehow made it worse. Damien, who are they? Several seconds passed. People connected to someone who does not like me very much. My stomach dropped. And they are interested in me because of you? His silence answered the question before he spoke. Yes. Anger flared inside me. I never asked to be involved in any of this. I know. For the first time since meeting him, Damien sounded genuinely frustrated with himself. Not with me. With himself. That is why I am trying to fix it. I almost laughed. Fix it? You followed me, investigated me, inserted yourself into my life, and now strangers are watching my school. Olivia. No. I stepped away from the crowd and into an empty hallway lined with student artwork. You do not get to solve this with money or donations or mysterious notes. Silence. Then his voice softened. You are right. The word stopped me cold. I had expected an argument. A defense. Not agreement. What? You are right, he repeated. I handled this badly. I leaned against the wall beneath a mural painted by third graders. For several moments neither of us spoke. Then Damien said something that surprised me even more. I am not very good at this. At what? Caring about someone and not making things worse. The honesty in his voice caught me completely off guard. Before I could respond, movement outside the hallway window drew my attention. A black SUV had pulled up near the school entrance. Not suspicious. Except I recognized it immediately. I had seen it outside the grocery store. Outside my apartment building. Outside the school. Damien's people. Watching. Protecting. Following. I still was not sure which. You already have people here, do not you? I asked. Yes. Without asking me. Yes. I closed my eyes. Somehow that answer felt more honest than any excuse would have. You are impossible. To my surprise, Damien laughed softly. It was the first time I had ever heard him laugh. The sound was brief. Genuine. Human. That is what my assistant tells me. Despite everything, a reluctant smile appeared on my face. Then the smile vanished as quickly as it came. Because through the front doors of the school, another unfamiliar man had just entered the fundraiser. Unlike the others, he was not looking around. He was looking directly toward the hallway where I stood. And for the first time since this strange situation began, a feeling I could not explain settled deep in my chest. The feeling that whatever was happening was about to become very real. The man stepped into the gymnasium with the confidence of someone who already knew exactly where he was going. Parents barely noticed him. Children continued laughing near the raffle tables. Music still played softly overhead. Yet every instinct I had was screaming that something had changed. I watched him move through the crowd while keeping the phone pressed against my ear. Damien, I whispered. There is someone here. The response came instantly. Describe him. I did. Gray coat. Dark hair. Mid-40s. Calm expression. Damien went silent. Not for long. Just long enough to make my pulse accelerate. Olivia, leave through the east exit. My stomach tightened. Who is he? Someone who should not know your name. That was not an answer. It was worse. I glanced toward the fundraiser floor again. The man had stopped near one of the display tables. He was smiling politely while speaking with a parent. Completely normal. Completely harmless. Except he kept looking around the room as though searching for someone. Searching for me. I cannot just leave, I said quietly. The children are here. Olivia. Damien's voice hardened. Please. The word caught me off guard. Please. Not an order. Not a command. A request. Before I could answer, Principal Henderson appeared beside me. Everything all right? She asked. I forced a smile. Yes. Just a phone call. She nodded and headed back toward the crowd. When I looked up again, the stranger was no longer near the display table. My heart skipped. He had disappeared. Damien. What? I cannot see him anymore. Several seconds passed. Then I heard another voice speaking somewhere near Damien. Urgent. Fast. The kind of voice that delivers information nobody wants to hear. Damien returned to the line immediately. Go outside now. Something in his tone erased every remaining argument. I moved. Fast. Through the hallway. Past student artwork. Past classrooms decorated with construction paper stars and hand-painted posters. My footsteps echoed against the polished floors. When I pushed through the east exit, cool evening air hit my face. The parking lot stretched before me beneath the glow of streetlights. And waiting beside the curb was the black SUV. The rear door opened before I reached it. I stopped several feet away. You sent a car? Yes. Without asking me. Yes. Despite everything, I almost laughed. The man truly never stopped being himself. Then a familiar voice spoke from behind me. Miss Parker? I turned. Sophie stood near the doorway holding a stack of raffle tickets. Relief flooded through me. Sophie, what are you doing out here? I was looking for you. She smiled innocently. Then her expression changed. Her eyes shifted past me toward the parking lot entrance. I followed her gaze. The stranger from the fundraiser had just emerged from the building. He was no longer smiling. And for the first time I realized he was not looking for me anymore. He was looking at Sophie. Sophie's small hand slipped into mine without hesitation. She had no idea why my heart was suddenly racing. To her, this was still a school fundraiser. A normal Friday night. A place filled with teachers, parents, and homemade cupcakes. But the expression on the stranger's face told a different story. He stopped near the edge of the parking lot and watched us. Not smiling. Not approaching. Just watching. The black SUV's rear door remained open beside me. Waiting. Miss Parker? Sophie asked softly. Is something wrong? I forced myself to smile. No, sweetheart. I just need you to go back inside and find your mom. She frowned. But I wanted to show you something. Before I could answer, another vehicle pulled into the lot. Then another. Neither looked unusual. Ordinary cars. Ordinary drivers. Yet something changed in the stranger's posture the moment they arrived. He glanced toward them, then back toward us. A second later, he turned and walked away. Just like that. No confrontation. No dramatic scene. He simply disappeared into the evening. I stared after him in confusion. Olivia. Damien's voice came through the phone again. Calm. Controlled. What happened? I told him. Silence followed. Then a long breath. The kind a person takes when a crisis has finally passed. Good, he said quietly. Very good. What was that? I asked. Who is he? For several moments, Damien said nothing. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded different. Tired. Honest. Someone who wanted to know whether you mattered to me. The answer hit harder than I expected. I looked toward the school entrance where parents were helping children carry decorations and raffle prizes to their cars. And do I? The question escaped before I could stop it. More silence. Then came the answer. Simple. Direct. Impossible to misunderstand. More than I planned. I closed my eyes. Somewhere behind me, the city hummed beneath the evening sky. Traffic lights changed. Horns echoed in the distance. Life continued. Yet everything felt strangely still. Damien. Yes? I spent weeks thinking you were trying to change me. A faint laugh came through the phone. And? I watched Sophie run back toward her mother through the school doors. Safe. Smiling. Completely unaware of the storm that had passed over her head. I think you were changing yourself. Another silence followed. But this one felt warm. Not awkward. Not uncertain. Just real. Maybe, he admitted. A light rain began to fall. Tiny droplets catching the glow of the parking lot lamps. I stepped closer to the SUV but did not get inside. Not yet. You know, I said softly, the first time I met you, I thought you were the most powerful man in New York. That sounds accurate. I smiled despite myself. Now I think you are just a man trying to figure things out like everyone else. For the first time since I had known him, Damien laughed without restraint. Genuine. Unfiltered. Human. And somehow that sound told me more about him than all the headlines ever could. Because power was never what changed Damien Moretti. It was the moment someone finally stopped being afraid of him and started telling him the truth.